What's the latest in the Middle East? Is there going to be a war between Israel and Iran?
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. What we're hearing right now is that maybe the Iranians are backing down because they're worried about a counterattack by Israel. I think it's too early to conclude that. It took the Iranians about 12 days to retaliate after Israel destroyed its consulate in Syria about 2 months ago. We're now about 9 days after this Hamas official was killed in Tehran. So I don't think the Iranians have decided how they're going to move yet. My belief is that Iran will probably commit some type of massive act of terrorism as retaliation and not engage in a massive missile barrage that Israel and Jordan and the U.S. will simply shoot down. I don't think it's going to waste its missile arsenal in this instance, also because Israel's ready for an attack. But I do think that there's going to be some kind of retaliation. And I just think Israel is really on the alert for whatever it might be.
The Iranians keep making these threats, so I guess you don't think they're empty threats.
I don't think they're empty threats. I think it's a matter of pride for the Iranian regime. They were humiliated when this Hamas guest was killed in an Iranian government guest house in Tehran by a bomb apparently planted by Mossad months earlier. I'm a former CIA officer. This was a brilliant intelligence operation. And the Iranians were really embarrassed. But I think the Iranian leaders also realized that whatever they do, Israel is capable of hitting them anywhere, and there's not much the Iranians can do about it.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the operation to kill this Hamas leader in Iran? What kind of planning and things would have gone into it?
Well, I mean, I don't know, and I'm no longer in the intelligence community. My understanding is somehow they got people into this guest house, and that may mean that the Israelis co-opted or bribed members of the Revolutionary Guard or Iranian government officials to plant this remotely detonated bomb to go off months in the future in this particular room where this Palestinian official would be staying. This really takes incredible intelligence to know how to do this, to acquire these assets. Apparently there is a big operation by Iran to interrogate people who may have been involved. They don't think this was an Israeli citizen agent who snuck into the compound. They think probably it was an Iranian national, maybe more than one national, but this is all speculation on my part.
In terms of Israel's response to Iran today, what do you think Israel should do to prepare itself for any potential attack?
Well, I think that Israel is prepared to respond aggressively, but also proportionately. I'm hearing that, some people are calling for Israel to respond if there are missiles fired on Israel by destroying military bases or taking out all of Iran's nuclear program. I think that would be a disproportionate attack unless the Iranian attack was fairly massive. I think Israel will try to respond proportionately so this situation doesn't spin further out of control.
Do you think that Israel's intelligence capabilities and so on have improved since October 7th, when they had that huge, disastrous failure from their intelligence services?
I don't know whether they've improved. I think they've always been excellent, but there's no doubt that the October 7th attack was a major intelligence failure. There's some reports that there was intelligence that could have prevented that attack. That's not uncommon. We know there was intelligence that would have stopped the 9/11 attacks on the United States. And the problem in the intelligence world is that there is simply a flood of threat reports. You don't know what to believe. I also think there was a failure of imagination. The Israeli government couldn't imagine that Hamas would attempt an attack so bold, and they couldn't imagine that there were a way around their defensive measures, their electronic measures. And so I think this is going to call for a very intensive investigation of what went wrong, and I think people have to be fired.
And do you think that Iran and other opponents of Israel sort of smell blood in the air after that failure? They sort of saw an opportunity there to strike whilst Israel was weak.
I don't think Israel was weak. I believe that Iran and other allies of Hamas somehow they I think they were surprised at the size of the Iranian retaliation against Hamas, and they decided to enter hostilities. What I do think is the case, and I hate to say this to a foreign broadcast network, is that this whole situation in large part was brought about by American weakness under Joe Biden, a deterioration of American deterrence, efforts by this administration, constant efforts to appease Iran, to get back into the deeply flawed 2015 nuclear deal, the JCPOA. I think these are factors that are indisputable, contributing to this crisis, and these are factors that are really beyond Israel's control.
And what about events in Lebanon? I know that many countries have urged their citizens to leave that country as soon as possible. Are you concerned, or do you think there will be a major conflict in Lebanon soon?
I'm worried how the hostilities between Israel and Lebanon have been growing, really creating a strong possibility that Israel may invade parts of southern Lebanon to clear it out, to get rid of areas, or to rid certain areas of sites that missiles can be fired from on northern Israel, because large parts of northern Israel are basically uninhabited right now because of the constant barrage of Hezbollah missiles and drones. That would be quite a dramatic development in this conflict. Turkey has said it might send in troops if that happened. I don't think Turkey would do that, but I think it would cause a greater escalation in attacks throughout the region by the Houthis, by the Iranians, by Iran-backed militias in Syria and Iraq. And it's a step that I don't think Israel wants to take. I'm hoping that Israel can wrap up the war in Gaza fairly quickly, and that may lead to a downturn in tensions, a decrease in tension. I think that's President Trump's position too.
In terms of the foreign policy of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, where do you see that going in terms of the Middle East? If they win in November, how will Harris deal with the Middle East?
I think the most disturbing thing I've seen from Harris is her decision to choose Walz as her vice president instead of Josh Shapiro, who I think was really, I'm from Pennsylvania. He is a very popular governor. He gave an incredible speech the day that Harris announced she was not picking him and was choosing Walz, and she didn't pick him because he's a pro-Israel Jew and because of these crazy anti-Israel, pro-Hamas, anti-Semitic, progressive radicals who would not tolerate someone like that on the ticket. I think she's basically given up Pennsylvania. She's put a thumb in the eye to American Jews, and I think it sends a terrible signal about what her foreign policy will be towards the Middle East. I think it's going to be much more hostile towards Israel. There's going to be more appeasement of Iran, appeasement of the Palestinians. And I think the security situation right now is bad, but at least Biden has a history of being pro-Israel. I don't think he's been particularly pro-Israel over the last year and a half or so. But I mean, he has a history of knowing this conflict and supporting Israel and the Israeli people. That is not the case with Kamala Harris. I think her presidency will be deeply destabilizing.
And finally, on Tim Walz, her pick for her VP nominee. People have accused him of kind of stolen valor, of sort of saying that he was in Iraq and other places when he wasn't. What do you make of all this sort of anger?
Well, friends of mine who are veterans claim he misrepresented his military service, that he left his National Guard service when he was called up to go to Iraq. He said this is because he was running for Congress. I was a congressional staffer. There's many members of Congress who continue to serve in the National Guard while they are in Congress. That's not a reason to not take a deployment or to leave military service. And there's other statements that he misrepresented his rank. And people who have served, and I have not served in the armed services, it's very serious for them how you represent yourself. And people who represent themselves as serving when they didn't and claiming they served in war when they didn't. This is an insult to people who risked their lives for our country. And it is a growing scandal here in the United States. And I recently heard someone on Fox News saying that Waltz really needs to go forward right now and apologize to the American people for this, because this scandal is going to get worse.
Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate your time.
Good to be here.